Okay, welcome to part two. So, where I left you before was that we had the source, we'd identified the arguments in the source to say that devolution is undermining the UK. We looked at the arguments, or we'd identified the arguments that devolution is not undermining the UK. I also went through how you would do this if it was a normal essay. Whilst it was uploading, however, I wrote out a paragraph if this was a normal essay without the source. So the main argument to suggest that devolution is undermining the UK is that nationalism has continued to grow. Nationalism threatens the UK, blah blah blah, Scotland, and then I put, however, a witness of this view is that nationalism has not developed in other parts of the UK, which would be my counter argument, which I didn't bother to write out, but obviously I would for an essay. Notice as well, this is something which people do miss in normal essays, so I'll just highlight it now, is this AO3 sentence, therefore devolution has stoked up nationalism in Scotland and therefore undermined the unity of the UK, before I come on to this counter argument. I just worked out, by the way, how you can do highlights on PowerPoint, so hence why you've got it on this one. Okay, so let's just go back one. So, in a normal essay, okay, you have these pairs of arguments, don't you? Nationalism undermining the UK, nationalism not undermining the UK. This undermining the UK caused by devolution, no it's not, because of this counter argument. So what you want to try and look for in these sources is, do any of these arguments match up? Are there any natural counter arguments within this source? Now I would suggest, I think there's two very obvious points which match up. So here we've got continuing demands for independence, and then down here we've got devolution has satisfied demands for self-government. These two match up, because this one here at the bottom is saying that demands for independence have been satisfied because Scotland, Wales and all that can rule themselves. At the top here, it is saying that union is threatened by demands for independence. So these two match up. This is the counter argument to this one. This is saying that independence is a big problem. This down here is saying that no, it's not, it's being resolved. Okay, here we've got this argument, tensions and inequalities created as policies differ between the devolved bodies. So this is the one saying things like, like tuition fees, for example, being different in Scotland compared to England is causing tension and, all the rest of it. So policy differences are bad, is what this is saying. And then down here, it is saying that policy divergences, so policy differences, reflect local democracies and identities. In other words, it is good. So again, this is the counter argument to this up here. So these 2 points clearly match up. You would then have to see whether the other ones do as well. And I would say they don't do quite as neatly. So we've got here about devolution's not been properly considered and the union's been taken for granted. And here we've got that the countries work together in a relationship of mutual self-respect. They match up less clearly, these two, don't they? Okay. But you could make an argument to say that devolution has not been well thought through. It has created unforeseen problems. Okay, and then this point here is saying, but yeah, chill about it. Okay, the countries do get on with each other. It's not quite as neat of a match-up, those two, to be fair. But I think the strongest two that really match up are these two here with these two down here. So let's write a paragraph, okay, using the source. Now, there's two things that you should not do with a source question. One is to ignore the source and use different arguments. So if, for example, you wrote a paragraph about financial devolution and the Barnett formula or something like that, you would get no marks for it because it's not an argument which is in the source. Secondly, don't just rewrite the source, which is what some people do, in a more mangled form of English. What you need to do is to use your knowledge to evaluate what the source is saying. So if we go to the paragraph I wrote before, if there was no source, we're just going to adapt it for this purpose. So I wrote here, the main argument to suggest that devolution is undermining the UK is that nationalism has continued to grow. Now, for this source question, okay, I would have a little quote from the source. I would say the main argument. Oh, let me get rid of the pen thing. So if I was writing this from the source, okay, as a source question, okay, this is how I'd do it. So the main argument, I would then mention the source as outlined in the source to suggest that devolution is undermined in the UK is that, and I would probably have a little quote, is that nationalism has continued to grow, okay, with, quote, continuing demands, you see where my poor typing now, continuing demands for independence, unquote. Okay, let's just put that in red and bold so you can see it. So I've directly referenced the source here, haven't I? I've not described the source, I've just developed it. Okay, I would then say this is a strong view made by the source because, and then I'd do my paragraph as I would do it normally. This is a strong view made by the source because nationalism, this is what I said before, threatens the UK, unity of the UK, as significant groups of people have voted for parties outside the UK. Okay, this is mostly seen in Scotland with the SNP, who wish Scotland to break away from the UK, dominated the number of seats in the Scottish Parliament and also the number of MPs returned to Westminster. Indeed, they're the third largest party in Westminster. Furthermore, in 2014, the referendum was held in Scotland, So here, I've used my own knowledge about the SNP are a growing threat, the Scottish independence, all to say, to support the view that the source has made a good point by saying that devolution has increased demands for independence and therefore is undermining the UK. Okay, I've not described the source, I've not ignored the source, but I've used my knowledge to evaluate what the source is saying. And this very end bit, before I do my counter argument, I need to just reference this source again. So here I've got much of this growth has taken place since devolution was started in 1998, which strongly suggests that devolution may have continued this growth. So this devolution, it strongly suggests that, oh goodness me, the source is correct. Let me just wonder. It's gone like a funny line. There we go. So again, I'm just making a brief reference to the source, just to show the example. I've not forgotten the source, okay? And saying the source is correct to why that devolution has continued nationalism, because look what's happened in Scotland. So you can see what I've done here. I've mentioned the source in the first sentence. I've had a little tiny quote from it, okay? So again, for the examiner, he knows I'm basing this off what the source has said. I say it's a strong view made by the source, and then I've used my knowledge to say why it's a good view made by the source. I would now come to my counter argument, wouldn't I? However, a witness of this view. And again, I need to use it from the source. So we identified before that the source says that it satisfies some demands for self-government. So, however, a witness of this view is that nationalism has not developed in other parts of the UK. And as the source suggests, it has, and what was the quote? Satisfies some demands for self-government. Okay, so again, I've used the source directly and now I would evaluate this. This view from the source that has some merit, has some credibility, has some points, whatever you want to use. I'm going to use have some merit because, and now I'd use my knowledge to say why it's done that. So I'd say things like, well, it's not a problem in Wales, is it? There hasn't been a big increase of nationalism there. The Welsh seem quite happy with their Welsh Parliament. There's not been massive issue in Northern Ireland either. And actually, even in England, opinion polls suggest that there's no real demand for like an English Parliament. So this all suggests that this argument from the source is correct. And then, just like in a normal essay, then at the end of the paragraph say, although this has some merit, actually the view from the source to say that demand for independence is growing is actually more accurate because yada yada yada. Then I do paragraph 2 in much the same way, and paragraph 3. Okay, I hope that kind of clears that up. Now, just a final thing. If there's no counter argument in the source to a point, so you might argue actually, if you look at the source, it says that devolution has not been properly thought through. And there isn't really, is there, a counter argument in this paragraph? If that is the case, then go about it this way. Let's just imagine, because I'm not going to rewrite a whole paragraph out again. Let's imagine there hadn't been this counter argument about nationalism. Okay, they just said that nationalism has grown, and there was nothing on the other side to say it has satisfied self-demands. What I would do is that you've got your argument from the source here at the beginning. When you did your counter argument, I would say, however, a witness of the view is that the source has not mentioned that nationalism has not grown everywhere. So again, I'm linking it to this argument of the source about demand for independence, because I'm saying it has not grown everywhere, which is what the source implies. And then I'd do my point here about how it's not such a big problem. Okay, it's still linked to the argument of the source, isn't it? Because you evaluated this view about independence from that. So for here, where it says that devolution has not been properly thought through, you can do that in your paragraph, and then your counterpoint say, however, a witness of this view is that actually devolution has been thought through, or whatever, or the union has not been taken for granted because yada yada yada. So I hope that helps you how to do these source questions. You're basically just mining the source for the main arguments for and against, and they just become the basis of your essay. Most of the essay you write should be very similar to a normal essay. You just need to bung in. Just make sure the arguments you use are those from the source, and then just make sure you say once or twice, this is a strong view made by the source because, or this is a weak view made by the source because, and then use that knowledge to say why it's a good point or why it's a bad point. So I hope that helps, and I hope that leads to some nice, lovely essays written over the Easter holidays.